درود بر شما. Ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Akrami. I'm an Iranian Canadian author and translator. I am also your host today. On behalf of Reza Amin and his family, I would like to welcome you all to the third anniversary of celebration of Mehdi Amin's life. Today, we gathered here to honor the memory of our dear friend Mehdi, who was brutally murdered on October 2020. In honoring Mehdi, we endeavor to embody the very qualities that he exemplified: kindness, compassion, unity, and activism. Perhaps you are wondering who Mehdi Amin was. Mehdi was a dear friend, a unifying force, a catalyst for connection, and a source of inspiration for others to strive for kindness, empathy, understanding, social and political activism. He was a remarkable person who passionately dedicated his life to fighting against genocide, crimes against humanity, ethno-religious apartheid, injustice, and more specifically, struggling against violation of human rights by the Islamic Republic in Iran. Mehdi was a kind, humble, and gentle person whose mere presence brightened our days, whose warmth and kindness touched the hearts of all who had the privilege of knowing him. His infectious smile, compassionate nature, and unwavering support were a source of solace and strength to countless individuals in our community. Whether it was lending a listening ear, offering words of encouragement, or extending a helping hand, his selflessness knew no bounds. In his absence, we find ourselves yearning for justice, desperate for some semblance of closure that may bring a silver of peace to our shattered souls. Let us remember the impact he had on our lives and strive to cultivate those qualities within ourselves as a tribute to his spirit and an act of defiance against the forces of the Islamic regime in Iran that seek to divide and conquer us. In rising to the occasion of remembering Mehdi, we invite you to stand up and clap hands in honor of Mehdi's life. Thank you. Please remain standing for the national anthems of Canada and Iran.
Before we hear from our first speakers, I would like to share a list of Mehdi's political activities with you. Mehdi was an organizer for many political seminars in Toronto for opponents of the Islamic regime. He also held numerous protests and political actions in Canada and the United States in opposition to violation of human rights in Iran and crimes against humanity committed by the Islamic regime. Mehdi financed and raised funds in support of political and cultural events for the Iranian community in Toronto. He was a prominent supporter of writers, poets, and artists from Iran living abroad and arranged book lunches for opposition writers. He organized and coordinated demonstrations against the regime in New York in front of the United Nations for several consecutive years, especially during the presidency of Ahmadinejad. This included the coordination and organization of a protest with 174 participants and 3 buses in 2010. Mehdi was one of the founding members of the Green Secular Society, which later changed its name to the Secular Democrats of Iran. In the organization, he was responsible for the treasury and the creation and maintenance of the society's website. At the time, the society had an astonishing number of members involved in opposition activities outside of Iran. Mehdi also played a significant role in the initial conference of the Secular Democrat Society in Toronto and in Washington. Mehdi was a member of a group of political activists who were campaigning for justice for victims of 1988 massacre, which in the summer of 2013 were successful in convincing the Parliament of Canada to adopt a unanimous motion recognizing the 1988 massacre as consisting crimes against humanity under international law. In year 2013, he participated wholeheartedly in a campaign to rid the presence of the Islamic Republic's lobbyists in the Iranian Canadian Congress. Mehdi was a supporter of the Magnitsky Act, which was passed unanimously in Canadian Parliament in October 2017. He also campaigned for the IRGC to be listed as a terrorist organization in Canada. He was a strong supporter of Bill S. 219 proposed by Senator Linda Fromm. In July 2019, Mehdi organized and coordinated a demonstration against the regime lobbying agency, National Iranian American Council, or also known as NIAC, in Washington, D.C. Mehdi participated and coordinated 3 protests against supporters of the regime who were in opposition to the elimination of Qasem Soleimani, the commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Mehdi was also a speaker at the celebration events for elimination of Qasem Soleimani, which were recorded and broadcast by the regime's agents. Many believe that the footage of Mehdi's celebration and speeches at that event angered the clerics and crossed the regime's red line. Lastly, due to his significant role in logistics, finance, and unity among opposition groups, Mehdi was considered to be a permanent enemy of the Islamic regime. At this point, I would like to introduce you our first speaker, Dr. Reza Moridi, former parliamentarian and former Minister of Research and Innovation and Science in Ontario, a scientist and a human rights activist.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Sarah. Ladies and gentlemen, my friends, and I see many of our elected officials, elected colleagues here. Thank you very much, Ms. Landsman, Deputy Mayor Godwin Chan, and also MP Goldi Gamari. If there are others here from elected officials, my apologies if I couldn't see you as I am sitting here. I'm standing here. We have gathered today to commemorate the brutal murder of Mehdi Amin 3 years ago, and also to honor his legacy. His legacy was activism for peace, activism for rule of law in his native Iran, as well as peace and security for Canada, the country which he loved dearly. Mehdi was a unique person. You just heard his very short biography, and I don't want to repeat that, but many of us know how active he was in his beliefs for democracy, for peace, and for rule of law. He was against the brutality of the Iranian regime from day one he arrived in Canada. I had the privilege of knowing Mehdi since he came to Canada, and in many, of course, demonstrations against brutality of the Islamic regime in Iran, we were together. Speaking of peace and also rule of law, this reminds us of yesterday, which was the Remembrance Day. As you know, on November 11th, the First World War ended. About 650,000 Canadians in 1914, more than 100 years ago. At that time, population of Canada was much less than as it is today. They participated in the war. 65,000 of them lost their lives. And during the Second World War, 1 million Canadians participated in the war, and the 45,000 of them didn't come back to Canada. They lost their lives. And of course, many Canadians in uniform served and lost their lives during the Cold War, and after that, in places such as Afghanistan and the peacekeeping. They lost their lives because they wanted us to live in peace, to live in security, to live in a country where the rule of law prevails. And the same was Mehdi, who wanted his native Iran to be a country of peace, prosperity, rule of law. Today, we see that the Middle East is boiling. On October 7th, as we all know, the terrorist group Hamas attacked Israel. And they murdered 1,400 innocent people who gathered somewhere near to the border of Gaza for a festival. They murdered them brutally and took more than 250 innocent people hostage. And those hostages, still they are in the hands of terrorist group Hamas. The world needs peace, but we need to work very hard to establish peace in the world. And one of the agents of terrorism in the world, as we all know, is the Islamic regime in Iran. When Hamas brutally attacked Israel, all the attentions of the public around the world paid attention to Israel, of course, and that was true. But many of us knew that the source of this terrorism is in Tehran. It was the Iranian regime who has been supporting terrorist groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and others in Iraq, in Yemen, and elsewhere. That was the source of terrorism. We hope that one day in the near future, with the assistance of the world community, to the people of Iran, the people of Iran will be able to get rid of this regime and to bring peace, bring stability and the security to Iran, not only to Iran, but of course for the Middle East and for the whole world for that matter. Sometimes people think that the regime's terrorist groups only attacking people in Middle East. They're active in Middle East only. But we all know that just after taking the office in 1979, this regime first started murdering the officials of former government one by one, And after that, a few weeks after that actually, they started killing people in Europe. Iranians who could, they escaped Iran for their lives, one by one, family by family. And today we see that there are 8 million Iranians living in countries such as Canada, which is the second largest country in the world, to the very small, tiny islands in the South Pacific and other oceans. 8 million, 10% of Iran's population escaped this regime. But the regime also doesn't leave these people in peace and security. The regime is after many of those people. They murdered about 350 opponents in France. They cut their head. The most notable one is the last prime minister under the Shah, Zindayat Dr. Bakhtiar. And the regime elements have penetrated to many countries very quietly. They are using freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and all kinds of freedom, and indeed rule of law in countries such as our beloved country, Canada, and in many countries in the West. They are misusing that and forwarding their own agenda. They're forwarding their own agenda. And it is rather unfortunate that politicians in the Western world, they are not paying enough attention to the nature of this regime. They are not paying attention that this regime is going to come after them. This regime is not going to leave them alone. It starts with the Middle East, it starts with Israel, it starts with other countries in the Middle East, but it will gradually come to Europe and, of course, North America, as it did, in fact. France is a good example. How many Iranians were killed in France? Mykonos restaurant in Berlin is another example where they killed many Iranians. And in countries such as the United States and Canada, they send their own elements. There was a video moving around in social media a few months ago, one of the regime elements shouting and screaming, saying that we are after you, as somebody was driving him on the car on Yonge Street or one of the streets of Toronto. So my message to our politicians, our government, our prime minister, the leaders of our political parties, is that be careful. Safety and security Canada is dependent upon your vision and upon your actions. And those 665,000 people who lost their lives during the First World War, and the 45,000 Canadians lost their lives in the Second World War. They did it because they wanted this country and be safe and secure. They didn't want Adolf Hitler to rule the world. Today, there's an Adolf Hitler is in the making. If the world is not careful, that is going to come after them. This is something requires vision, requires action. Canada is a multicultural country. We are so grateful that living in a country where all cultures are respected, celebrated. But in the meantime, we have to be Canadians. First, we have to be Canadians. And then, of course, we are Iranians. And this is something which we all have to keep in mind. This is the country we have chosen. So, and we expect our politicians, our political leaders also pay attention to this matter, that we are all first Canadians. Whatever traditions we have, what tradition I have as an Iranian, that is fine to me. But first, to me, the thing that is important is the Canadian traditions. I have to become Canadian. No one can take Iranianship from me. I've been born with that. But to be a Canadian, we have to earn it. And our politicians should teach us and our leaders should teach us how to earn Canadianness. And of course, that comes with paying attention to safety and the security of this country. I am so glad to see that some of the members of the Iranian community, they are serving in Canadian military. I encourage and I do encourage our young people to choose to serve in Canadian military. We have a colonel in Canadian Army. We have a captain, a jet pilot in Canadian Air Force. And of course, there are many sergeants and the other ranks serving Canadian military. I myself had the honor of teaching at 13 Canadian military bases on radiation protection for military officers many years ago. So these are some of the things that we need to pay attention. But the theme of this meeting today, as you can notice from that poster there, it says, Justice for Iran, Safety and Security for Canada. I think the second part is as important as the first part. In fact, the second part is much more important because we are all living in Canada, we are Canadians, and we want our country to be peace and to be secure. We don't want the elements of the Iranian regime just walking on the streets of Toronto. We don't want the elements of the regime doing money laundering in Canada. We don't want the elements of the regime just easily, coming and going and leaving this country or using Canada as a base for their own agenda. That requires, again, lots of attention, not only by our leaders, not only by our security agencies, but for every one of us as Canadians. So in closing, I want to pay tribute to Mehdi Amin, the man who worked so hard in order to promote human rights and safety and security, rule of law in his native Iran, and also as a good Canadian, he loved this country. Thank you very much, and let us hope peace will come to Middle East, and also human rights and security to Iran. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Dr. Moridi. We have a video from Minister Michael Parsa. Minister Parsa is MPP for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, and Minister of Children, Community, and Social Services.
Good afternoon. I'm Michael Parsa. I'm the Member of Provincial Parliament for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, and I'm also the Minister of Children, Community and Social Services in the province of Ontario. 3 years ago, many of us lost a friend when Mehdi Amin was murdered. There are a lot of questions about his murder. His family has been fighting for justice and trying to get some answers. But this is every year we get to remember him, a kind soul, a man who quietly always came and was a giant when it came to human rights, defending the voiceless, standing up for people who needed someone to be there for them. I'm going to miss him. He was always by our side on many occasions. I remember standing out, whether it was extreme heat or on the rain or extreme cold. He never complained. He always had a smile on his face. And he stood shoulder to shoulder with all of us to fight for human rights, to fight for justice. He's dearly missed by all of us, by his family. And I stand with his family and seek justice for Mehdi. To Reza and his entire family, I'm really sorry for your loss.
Thank you, Dr. Moridi and Minister Parsa. At this time, we will present a short video clip, followed by a short film. The short film is an excerpt of the interview by Michael Wallace with cleric Hashemi Rafsanjani, former president of Islamic Regime in Iran and one of the masterminds of 1988 massacre of political prisoners, and also the Islamic Regime's political activities abroad, including the Mykonos restaurant assassination in Germany. And the short film is made by Mr. Reza Amin, and it's called Justice for Iran, Safety and Security security for Canada.
Killing dissidents, refugees from Iran, resistance people from Iran. You've killed them in Germany, in France, in Iraq, in Turkey, in Pakistan. And you know, I have a list of them here of 300 of resistance people, dissidents.
Well, these are all claims. Many of them are not true. In some cases, they have been distorted.
Well, shall I leave with you this list of people who have been either killed, assassinated, or seriously injured by your people, your so-called terrorists? Names, dates, places, countries.
But all these, not even one case in all these is related to Iran, that is, to the government of Iran. These are all internal conflicts between them, things that have nothing to do with us. Tell me about a proven case. These are all claims. The dissidents of other countries, the dissidents of the United States abroad, have they never been killed? Inside the United States, people who have been against the government, have they never been killed?
No legal reference has ever been able to prove any of these cases that are being claimed.
In France, in Germany,
Has it been proved?
to the satisfaction, I'm well aware, to the satisfaction of the French, yes.
در حدی که فرانسوی‌ها رو راضی بکنه.
And there's one that's going on in Germany at this moment, as you well know.
If you find one case, if you find one competent court where this has been proven, I will accept what you say.
All right.
Paris at 1 p.m. on Friday, December 7th, 1979. Target: Ali Akbar Tabatabai. The target this time was General Gholami Ali Obaisi.
Bomb squad called in after explosion in central London.
Reza Fazeli, an artist who opposed the government, was the next target of the death group. Even the London Metropolitan Police refused to answer a question. saying that because the murder of Bijan Fazeli was still unclear and an unresolved question, any disclosure of information would lead to the exposing of their sources. The target was Dr. Abdul Rahman Gazemlou, Vienna, July 13, 1989. Amir Mansour Borzerjan, a commander of the Islamic Revolutionary, was one of the terrorists and one of the murderers of Dr. Gazemlou.
بزرگان که اول گفته بود که من اصلا اونجا نبودم، رفت دادم مکدونالد بخرم که بعد پلیس ادعایشون رو قبول نکرد، بهشون بازداشت شدم. ولی بعد تحویل سفارت ایران دادنش. وقتی پرونده شروع شد به طور جدی پیگیری کردنش، معلوم شد که ایشون نقشی در این کار داره و متاسفانه دولت اتریش با اسکورت پلیس ایشون رو فرستاد به فرودگاه و ایشون از فرودگاه با هواپیمای ملی ایران برگشت ایران.
Dr. Abdurrahman Buruman was stabbed to death in the lobby of his apartment by agents of the Islamic Republic. Paris, August 6, 1991. Dr. Shapur Bakhtiar was murdered along his secretary, Soroush Katibe, by 3 assassins in his home in the Parisian suburb. Both men were killed with kitchen knives. Their bodies were not found until at least 36 hours after death.
The killers of the last Prime Minister of the Shah and his secretary, Soroush Katibe, pretending to come to his place to give an important message to Bakhtiar, executed their mission incredibly fast.
یکشون پا شد از اتاق نشیمن رفت تو آشپزخونه و آقای کتیبه گفت که حال دکتر بختیار خوب نیست. ایشون پا شد داشت تلفن میکرد و اون موقع تلفن خورد زمین. به سرعت آمد وارد سالن بشه، اون موقع چاقو خورد. یکی از اونها که خونه رو خوب میشناخت چاقوی دیگری از تو آشپزخونه برداشت و داد به اون 2 نفر دیگه و کارو اینجور تمام کردن. یعنی همش در هر صورت با 30 ثانیه تمام شد. اینها تمرین داشتن.
Germany, Bonn, August 6, 1992. Target, charismatic singer, Feridun Farakzadeh. The assassination of the opposition at the Mykonos restaurant in Berlin, Germany. Ali Falahian, the head of Ministry of Intelligence of Iran, he secretly visited Schmidt-Bauer, the Ministry of Security of Germany, and managed to prevent the progress of the case. The German Minister of Justice ordered that the Islamic State should not be named. Thus, Iranian state was once again escaping conviction. The secret meeting didn't go unnoticed for long, and it turned into a controversial news by the German press and Parviz Dasmachi, who was a political analyst and the only survivor of Mykonos. And because the state of the Islamic Republic was behind this assassination, This operation was declared a state assassination. Sky News, according to European intelligence sources, confirms that the Unit 400 of Quds Force employs local proxy mercenaries through military affiliates of embassies of the Islamic regime to establish connections with criminal gangs. Most of the abduction and physical elimination operations in Europe and America are carried out using this method by the Unit 400 of the Quds Force. Keep your eyes open, Hamburg. Islamic Center Hamburg is an outpost of Tehran's regime. In its annual report, the Federal Intelligence Services of Germany has named Hamburg's Islamic Center as a branch of Islamic Republic of Iran due to its activities. During the past decades, this center has supported Shiite extremists and terrorist groups. It was also in contact with two fundraising organizations that were affiliated with the Lebanese Hezbollah. Therefore, after receiving this report, the Administrative Court of Hamburg issued an extradition judgment for a deputy of the center, who was a clergy named Solomon Musavi. Islamic Center Hamburg also supports the illegal local bodies of Hezbollah in Germany. In its 2019 report, the Federal Intelligence Services of Germany declared that there are 30 mosques and Islamic cultural centers in Germany that are affiliated with the Lebanese Hezbollah. According to the same report, contrary to Islamic Center's nonpartisan claim, it receives instructions from the regime in Tehran for exporting the revolutionary ideology across the world. The Lebanese Hezbollah uses the Islamic Center Hamburg for drug dealing and money laundering. All efforts are still being made for closure of the Islamic Center. German Parliament, October 13, 2020, Jürgen Braun.
Das Mullah-Regime möchte das Land Israel von der Landkarte tilgen. Ayatollah Khamenei bezeichnet Israel im Mai als Krebsgeschwür. Weltweit verbreiten die Mullahs den politischen Islam und fördern den Terrorismus. Nur ein Beispiel. In Hamburg betreibt der Iran eine riesige Hasspredigerzentrale, das Islamische Zentrum Hallenburg.
German Parliament, October 13, 2020, Beatrix von Storch.
Aber das kam natürlich zu spät und ist zu wenig. Schlagen wir der Hydra den Kopf ganz ab. Verbieten wir die Islamistenvereine, schließen wir die Islamistenmoscheen. Schluss mit der Anbiederung an das Blutregime in Teheran. Vielen Dank.
Masoud Mulavi was assassinated 2019 in Turkey. Two Turkish intelligence officials told Reuters Iranian diplomats were involved in the killing of Masoud Mulavi. Masoud Mulavi, an Iranian intelligence operative organization within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. He defected to West in June 2018 and made extensive revelations against the regime in his Telegram channel, Black Box, in Turkey.
مسعود میگفت یه شخصی به نام مجید جوهری که نماینده پارلمان کاناداست، نماینده حزب لیبرال منطقه ریشموند هیل، میگفتش که ایشون با یه سری از مقامات امنیتی ایران و نماینده آقای طائب و مجتبی خامنه‌ای دیدارهایی داشته و توسط این آدم‌ها ساپورت مالی شده و الان برای بار دوم ایشون شد نماینده مجلس کانادا.
In this regard, Kaveh Shahruz, a Canadian lawyer and senior fellow of MacDonald Laurier Institute, has posted a series of tweets. As I've highlighted before, Johari has a suspiciously close relationship with a local imam who the CRA has effectively stated is an Iranian agent. The CRA alleges that Reza Hosseini Nassab runs an organization that promotes Iran's ideology in Canada. And MP Majid Johari is his close associate. The cleric's son works in the MP's constituency office. The Iranian government influenced campaign in Canada. The Imam Mahdi Mosque at John and Bayview in Toronto, and this man, Reza Hosseini Nassab. Reza Hosseini Nassab was the Imam of Islamic Center Hamburg from 1999 to 2003. Hosseini Nassab was also the founder of Imam Mahdi Islamic School in Windsor, Imam Mahdi Islamic Center in Toronto, Ontario, Wali Asar Islamic Center in Toronto, and Ahlul Bayt Center in Ontario. And since 2003, he has been the president of Shia Islam Federation in Canada. And about the Imam, Shahruz's tweets continue as following. The head of that organization is Reza Hosseini Nassab, an Iranian cleric in Toronto by way of Yazd, Qom, and Hamburg. A pretty incredible letter from the CRA stripping another of Hosseini Nassab's organizations, the Islamic Shia Assembly of Canada, of charitable status for, inter alia, facilitating the spread of the Iranian revolutionary ideology in Canada. His associates seem openly and vocally supportive of the Iranian regime. According to the CRA, the government of Iran appears to exert a high degree of influence.
A candlelit vigil was held tonight for an Iranian dissident found murdered inside his Markham townhouse a week ago. York Regional Police identified 58-year-old Mehdi Amin as the victim of the suspected homicide. He's being remembered as a well-liked member of the Iranian Canadian community and a tireless human rights advocate who attended political rallies against the Islamic regime in Iran.
Mehdi was loved by everyone. It didn't matter what kind of point of view the person had. Mehdi was such a personable person, and he was so kind, so thoughtful, so down to earth that everybody just loved him, and his murder has come like an absolute shock to all of us.
While a possible motive or any word of a suspect has not been released by investigators, the community says Amin's death has left them feeling uneasy about the possibility it may have been politically motivated.
Mehdi Amin's invitation to protest against the president of the regime in New York in front of the United Nations. call by Mehdi Amin to counter-protest in opposition to the demonstration organized by supporters of Qasem Soleimani at U.S. Consulate in Toronto. Invitation by Mehdi Amin to counter-protest in opposition to supporters of Qasem Soleimani at the Imam Ali Center, Toronto, on January 5, 2020. The last posting by Mehdi Amin, 2 days before his murder, regarding the beheading of Samuel Paty by Islamic terrorists.
اینجا اومدم که اعتراض خودم رو به انتخاب آقای جوهری اینجا اعلام بکنم. به نظر من آقای جوهری نماینده واقعی ایرانی کانادایی های ریچموند هیل نیستن.
On October 15th, 2019, I came here to voice my opposition against the Federal Liberal Party of Canada's nomination of Mr. Johari. In my opinion, Mr. Johari is not a true representative of Iranian Canadians in Richmond Hill. Picketing in front of the office of Minister of External Affairs of Canada. Demonstrating in opposition to commemoration of Khomeini at Islamic Society of York in Richmond Hill in 2015. Gathering in front of the office of the Minister of External Affairs of Canada. Expressing happiness and burning of the Islamic regime's flag in relation to the commemoration of Qasem Soleimani. Protest against the nuclear agreement, joint comprehensive plan of action between the USA and Islamic Regime in Washington, D.C.
ما اومدیم امروز اینجا که به لابی‌های رژیم و به دشمنان مردم ایران بگیم که ما اینجا هستیم و برای حمایت از اونها.
Picketing in front of the office of the Minister of External Affairs of Canada to add Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps to the terrorist list. Counter-protest in opposition to the rally organized by supporters of Qasem Soleimani, January 2020.
برای آزادی ایران، برای دفاع از حقوق مردم ایران، جوانهایی که 2 هفته پیش به حالت فجیع کشته شدند، برای انتقام خونینا و برای ثابت کردن به این که ما در کانادا اجازه نخواهیم داد لابی‌های رژیم اینجا رو تیک اوور بکنن.
For the freedom of Iran, for defending the rights of the Iranian people, for the young ones who were brutally killed just 2 weeks ago, for avenging their blood, and to demonstrate that we will not allow the regime's lobbyists to take over Canada.
Now I would like to invite the Honorable Melissa Landsman, one of 2 deputy leaders of MPP Poiliev of the Conservative Party of Canada and Public Relations Executive, who serves as the Member of Parliament for Thornhill in the House of Commons.
Thank you so much. Reza, we will make sure that Mr. Johari does not serve in Parliament after the next election. You have my word. And if I may be so brass as to do this from the podium, but I think Mr. Moretti would make a very, very candidate on the other team, on the blue team, if you're willing. Look, we're here today to continue that the fight for peace and freedom in Iran. And I'm here as an ally and as a longtime friend and as one of your biggest supporters in Parliament amongst so many of my friends. I am here on behalf of Pierre Poilievre, the next Prime Minister of Canada, and somebody who understands this issue. I want to say something to start. My understanding and interest of this issue has never been one that had an expectation of quid pro quo. But I am so thankful for your support when our community is seeing the depths and the horrific, sadistic nature of the Iranian regime and what they are doing as funders of Hamas who kill Israelis. Thank you. Thank you for standing with us. We are here to continue the work of somebody very important. And for more than 40 years, the people of Iran have battled the basic human rights that we enjoy here in Canada, that we must maintain, that we must continue. And the journey certainly has been a difficult one, and it continues to this day. And we have made some progress. I think there is a better understanding of the evils of the mullahs in Iran, and I think there is a better understanding of the evils with people in the streets of Canada, but the pressure must be maintained. And the progress has been especially inspiring in the last year, particularly with the Women Life Freedom movement, or a little bit longer than a year, culminating in the Nobel Peace Prize to our friend Narges Mohammadi. And that progress has come at a great cost. That progress is at the cost of time, the cost of money, and of course, the cost of human life. And countless heroes like Mehdi Amin lost his life in service to the cause. And it should have never happened here in Canada. It should never happen anywhere in the world. But because of his sacrifices, because of the hard work and dedication of the community, we are closer to a breakthrough in Iran. So we honor him, we remember him, and we continue his work. We continue the work of Linda Frum, we continue the work in our party, and we must not lose motivation. Nobody here. We certainly must not lose hope. We've come too far to give up, and we must continue to fight with determination, keeping our perseverance and keeping the hope in our hearts that someday we will see a free Iran. And now more than ever, the importance and the urgency is calling, and I think that people are beginning to understand. We see more women and girls like Armita Garvand who are beaten brazenly in the streets of Iran, and we now see that in the news on mainstream media. People are starting to notice. The community is starting to notice. You have allies that are starting to notice. And we continue to witness the heartbreaking and inhumane conditions of thousands of political prisoners whose only crime was to tell the truth. And we can't let that happen, certainly in Canada. And of course, we can't ignore the state of the Middle East. Israel fighting for its very existence against the radical terrorists funded by the IRGC. This is the moment. This is the moment where the world needs to wake up, and the task might be long and arduous, and it might seem difficult for a small group of people to accomplish, but don't forget that the world is paying attention because of a single photo of a 22-year-old woman. That changed. That single photograph sent shockwaves around the globe, and all of the work of Mehdi comes to fruition now. And his fight will not have been in vain. And we can start right here in our own backyard by listing the IRGC, still not recognized as a terrorist group in this country, still able to fundraise, still able to organize, still able to work out at the Good Life Fitness down the street, or have a steak dinner at the Casa Loma, just a little bit farther down on a different street. That should never be allowed in Canada. And the fact that parliamentarians allow this to go, the fact that we still have Majid Johari in Parliament is a crime. It is a crime for all Canadians. Even in a free nation like Canada, the community, the innocent, freedom-loving Iranians who are Canadians first, are harassed on a daily basis by IRGC agents. And we've heard stories, and I've gotten calls from blocked out phone numbers and people in cars away from their homes because they are terrified to live here in Canada, and that should never be accepted. You have our word that we will list the IRGC as the terrorists that they are, that we will get to the bottom, of those who shot down flight PS752. We will have the RCMP investigate, and people will go away to prison for the murder of Canadians in this country. And today we remember Mehdi Amin, not in vain, but we remember him as a brave hero who was the voice of the voiceless. And understand that it's now our commitment to carry on that voice, to carry on the work, to do everything that a young life cut too short wasn't able to do. We owe it to this country. We owe it to the safety and security of every Canadian. We owe it to our armed forces. We owe it to those who fight for us. And we owe it to Mehdi. So thank you very much for inviting me. You always have my word. And I assure you that you have in the next Prime Minister somebody who will understand the threat to this community, take it seriously, list the IRGC, and finally make Canada safe for Canadians, no matter who you are, where you come from, what your name is. We will not be a safe haven for terrorists who live amongst us.
It's time to hear from Reza Amin, Mehdi's brother, to present his speech. آقای امین.
Ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries, good afternoon. On February 11th, 1979, in collaboration with Anglo-American and with support of France and Germany, Islamists under the leadership of the Shia cleric Khomeini took power in Iran, which led to establishment of first ISIS in the world, the Islamic State of Iranian Shia, officially known as Islamic Republic of Iran. From 1979 to 1988, the Islamic regime carried out the largest political massacre in Iranian history. During show trials in more than 85 cities across the country, the victims were sentenced to death by the Islamic Revolutionary Courts on charges of spreading corruption on earth, espionage, terrorism, or enmity against Allah. Starting on July 19th, 1988, and continuing for approximately 5 months, the officials of the Islamic regime in Iran, acting on the orders of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini, summarily and extrajudicially executed thousands of political prisoners who were also subjected to torture across the country. Unfortunately, at the time, there was a media blackout not only across the country, but across the globe. However, there were prisoners, individuals, and family members of the victims who reported the massacre and shed light on the atrocities. Among the young people who were aware of the executions was Mehdi Amin, whom was deeply affected by the prevailing conditions in the country. Facing constant serious threats, in June 1989, he left Iran and arrived in Canada after 2 months stopover in Turkey. Mehdi, with tremendous determination and unwavering dedication, achieved successes in Canada that would have been impossible in Iran. Later, Mehdi entered the political arena and, with remarkable persistence, pursued political work alongside this personal life. Initially, his love for the defense of defenseless Iranian people and human rights and democracy for Iran. Gradually, he also focused on exposing the political Islam extremist ideology and safety and security of Canadian society. Mehdi strongly believed in laïcité. He was a true Democrat who collaborated with freedom lovers, individuals, groups, organizations, and political parties with fundamentally different worldviews, with the aim to strike a blow against the Islamic Republic. Throughout his more than 3 decades of activism, Mehdi considered the Islamic regime as the primary enemy of the Iranian people. He always believed in the collaboration of various opposition factions. And his message to opposition abroad was hope, aspiration, solidarity, and unity. Let's remind ourselves that in the future, a free Iran must be built by these same people side by side. Mehdi was very concerned about the onslaught of regime leaders and elements on Canada, and was never willing to see the country he had built his life in experience the bitter taste of losing security. As a result, he always stood at the forefront of efforts to declare that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is a terrorist organization, impose comprehensive sanctions on the regime's leaders, and close the embassy and other cultural and religious centers of the Islamic regime in Canada. In this regard, I would like to remind the Canadian authorities that the Islamic regime is a dangerous virus, and the Iranian people understand the nature of this virus better than anyone else. Furthermore, I assure you that the agents of the Islamic regime did not come to Canada with the stolen wealth to enrich Canada. Therefore, and if necessary, actions not taken accordingly, the agent will bring a dark future to Canada. It should be a warning to the Canadian authorities that the Islamic regime is a threat to humanity, and its growth and spread must be prevented in Canada. Furthermore, the Canadian government must prevent the infiltration of the thieves of Iran's resources to exploit the Canadian democracy and turn Canada into a center for their evil deeds. In conclusion, I reiterate Mehdi's word. We have said it before. We will not let the Islamic Republic take over Canada. Thank you.
I would like to invite the Honorable Goldi Gamari, member of the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario, representing the riding of Carleton.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. First of all, my condolences to Rizzo and all of Mehdi Amin's family and friends. Thank you as well, Dr. Morty. What you spoke about was so important, and I hope that your speech is your entire speech is published and put online, because every single word of what Dr. Mordi is saying is so important. It's so critical. And I also support what MP Melissa Lantsman said about you running as our conservative candidate in Richmond Hill. A little known fact, I actually known Pierre since 2015. We share the same riding. He's the federal member, I'm the provincial member. So when Melissa Lantsman stands here and says to you that Pierre is aware of the issues regarding Iran, that's because him and I talk about it all the time. We even have a WhatsApp chat, so I can text him anytime I want. So that gives me confidence, because I have known Pierre since 2015. He understands the real threat of the terrorist and illegitimate Islamic regime in Iran. He understands the threat that it poses in Canada. He understands that Canada has become a safe haven for the terrorist and illegitimate Islamic regime in Iran. And he understands why it is so important to put the IRGC on the terrorist list, to prevent murders like this, to prevent Mehdi Amin's murder. I also want to speak a little bit about the importance of speaking out about this. I've been speaking out about the terrorist Islamic regime in Iran, this Islamo-fascist regime, for over a year on social media. And every time I've tried to speak out about it, I've been accused of being Islamophobic or racist or whatever the case might be. And this is a tool that the Islamo-fascists use to silence our voices. Because there is a difference between Islam and Islamofascism. And we have to be confident and we have to be strong. And anytime someone tries to silence our voice when we talk about the terrorist Islamic regime in Iran, we have to let them know it is not Islamophobic to call out terrorism. If we don't do it, who will? Because what we're seeing right now, this rise of radicalism in Canada, in USA, in Europe, around the world, this is all coming from the terrorist and illegitimate Islamic regime in Iran. They fund Hamas, they fund Hezbollah. We know this. We know this. And so I think it's so important that we keep on speaking out. And, myself, I will continue to speak out. I will not allow my voice to be silenced, because if we don't sound the alarm and if we don't make our politicians aware and take this seriously, who will? So thank you very much for inviting me again. My condolences to Mehdi Amin's family و به امید آزادی ایران.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite Mr. Clinton Ellis, Amin's family lawyer. Hi.
Thank you, Madam. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am profoundly happy to be here tonight. For those of you who are visually challenged, I'm not Iranian, but I didn't have a choice. I'm glad to be here. Thanks to Reza for inviting me here to say a few words. I was told that I only had a few minutes to say a few words. I did come prepared to say a lot of things, but most of what I wanted to say have already been said. And therefore, I am at the moment prepared to ask you just a couple of questions, and I will take my seat. And thank you for that speech, sir. That was lovely. Some of the facts that you have outlined I was unaware of. Thank you. So let me ask you this question. I'm a human rights lawyer. I do criminal work, so I fall right within the range of the issues that we are addressing here tonight. Now, we are not here to cry, and we're not here to weep and to mourn and to moan. We're here to celebrate a life well lived. In the 58 years that Mehdi spent on this earth, he was able to accomplish a lot more than we would be able to do in combination. And so we celebrate his life tonight, this evening. And I hope that this will be an object lesson for us going forward, to do all we can to safeguard the freedom that he has fought for. So let me ask you this fundamental question. Why are you here? If I were to ask you that question individually, each person would have a different answer. Why are you here? Some of you would say, I was invited by Reza and his lovely wife. Some of you would say, I'm a co-worker of Mehdi. I was a co-worker of Mehdi. Some of you would say, I am interested in the values he espoused. And some of you would say, Mehdi was profoundly interested in his freedom, your freedom, and my freedom. There was nothing on his plate that was greater than the fundamental freedom that we are supposed to have access to. What therefore can we do to continue within the tradition that he has started? We have to be vigilant. Do not take your freedom for granted. It is given to you free, but freedom is costly. We have to be vigilant wherever we go in our community, because there are some wild animals that are dressed like sheep, and they don't eat grass, they eat meat. And therefore you have to be careful as to who you relate to, what you say to certain people, because you never know what you're giving away. Currently, Reza and I are working on some things in order that we can bring some light to bear on the mystery surrounding the murder of his brother. And I'm hoping, by the grace of God, that we will be able to accomplish that greater objective in order to bring certain people to the fore so that we will be able to identify the enemies who live in our community. Do not take your freedom for granted. Be vigilant. Be aware. Watch your steps. Do not sacrifice the freedom that you've already won. Build on what you have now, so that we will be able to celebrate in days ahead the victory ultimately over the enemy. Blessings.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite Mr. Gargi-Chan.
Good afternoon. My name is Godwin Chan. I'm the Deputy Mayor of Richmond Hill. I wasn't planning to say a few words, but I just want to echo the speaker before me. Very thoughtful question. I'm just paraphrasing that. Why are we here? My good friend, Dr. Reza Moretti, the Honorable Minister Lensman and the MVP said should be recorded and shared with everyone what you have said. And I would say my reason to be here is not just because I've been invited, because I strongly believe, and also as someone who is legally trained, rule of law, fairness, freedom, We must protect it, not only in Iran, but in Canada. It really hurts me because I saw the murder of an activist, Mehdi Amin. Honestly, I don't know of him, but based on this afternoon, I have so much respect for him as a fearless advocate, and hundreds of other people, as pointed out by speakers, as well as some of the videos or short movies we've seen in Europe, across the world. In particular, being a member of the York Regional Council, the murder happens in Markham, York region. The term I'm thinking of is too close for comfort. This is our region. This is our city. This is our country. And Dr. Risa Moretti, I can relate to exactly what you're talking about. Not only we are all here, and I stand in solidarity with the Iranian community to fight and continue to get justice for Iran, as well. It touches on the safety and security for Canada and for our fellow Canadians. So as fellow Canadians, I agree with you. I salute Mr. Amin for your fearless work advocating against a regime miles apart. But I think that it does also give us a really galvanized point so that together we know this battle to get freedom is not easy, but it must be fight. So thank you very much for inviting me here. In fact, I want to also send my condolences to Amin's family, and my heart go out with you. And I would certainly see what actually had the outcome of that investigation, perhaps 3 years ago. So thank you for having me. And the struggle is continuing, and I want to know, and I'm comforted to see that regardless of this brutal murder in Europe, and now too close to home, is happening. We must not allow that to happen anywhere, not in York region, not in Canada. It's certainly one of these days, as I was saying to Dr. Moretti, I look forward to time that I can really visit Tehran, Iran, and also your hometown, where actually the city of Richmond Hill has a street for your hometown. I look forward to that day. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. I would like to invite Mr. Shahram Namwarazad, who was a friend of Mr. Mehdi Amin, to provide a speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being in here. Remembering a dear friend of ours, which is not with us, but his memory will never leave us. We'll fight till we get our country back, Iran. 38 years ago, when I left Iran, I left my heart, and I just brought my body in here to look for a better life. Try to escape the country that was occupied with a bunch of people that had no value for life. We came here, even though we are here, but our roots are back home. There's not a day we are not worried about whatever is happening in there. We know where the root of the problem is. We know Islamic regime by now, if after 44 years we are still closing our eyes on it. and we are still tolerating the atrocity against human rights and all the human violation that's done by the regime in the name of their ideology, we either don't care for humanity or I don't know what to call us if we don't stand for it. I have tons of things to say about this. Mehdi was a close friend of mine. We were like brothers. I wish I could be. I don't know how to say it. I wish I could be as brave as he was. I'm going to make my speech short because I have a friend in here. I would like to ask him to come in here, say a few words. He has been beside us. He knows our struggle. And he's a friend that never left us. And I'm pretty sure with people like him, we're going to achieve our freedom. And we're going to keep this country safe, the country that gave us a place to live. Even though we've been followed by a bunch of murderers in here, but hopefully our friends will help us to gain our freedom back. With your permission, I will ask my dear friend, Mr. Richard Robb, please, if you could share this stage with me, I appreciate that.
Thank you. First, I would like to give my condolences to the family of Mehdi Amin, and I would like to thank his family and the organizers of this event, and my good friend Shahram, for inviting me here to speak to all of you today. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Richard Rupp. I may not be Persian, but I am a human being, and I stand in solidarity with you today because what is going on in Iran affects all humans around the world. Last time I spoke to the Iranian community, it was in commemoration of the death of Mahsa Amini. That same week, the Biden administration in the United States had given $6 billion over to Iran in a prisoner swap. And I said then at that speech that we know that this $6 billion will not be used for humanitarian aid for the Iranian people, but will instead go to creating more war, more conflict, and more murder by this evil regime. Little did we know that only a few weeks after I said that, one of Iran's evil proxies, Hamas, would smash into Israel, behead babies, rape women, kidnap innocent civilians, and murder and massacre by the hundreds and thousands. This had the Islamic Republic of Iran's fingerprints all over it. Here in Canada, our own Prime Minister Trudeau, who is the most scandal-plagued and ethically challenged Prime Minister ever in Canadian history, has given empty promises of listing the IRGC as a terrorist organization. In 2018, while Justin Trudeau was Prime Minister, the Conservative Party passed a motion in Parliament to list the IRGC as a terrorist organization. It's 5 years later, and Trudeau still has not listed the IRGC. Again this year, the Senate of Canada passed a motion to designate the IRGC as a terrorist organization. And again, Trudeau has still done nothing. Trudeau literally refuses to accept the will of the Canadian people and is slapping every one of us Canadians on the face. In fact, I will suggest to you now, both the Biden administration and Trudeau's Liberal government are complicit with the Islamic Republic of Iran's evil regime. Ladies and gentlemen, we must speak loudly to our elected officials that what is going on here in Canada and in Iran cannot be tolerated in a civilized society anymore. We must lift up our voices until the elected officials here take action and not slap us on our faces anymore. The time for action is now. We must continue to speak up, advocate for those whose voices have been silenced, like Mehdi Amin, and work towards a society where every individual is treated with dignity, respect, and equality under the law. I will leave you with one last thought that has come to me in all that has transpired in the last few weeks. Since the revolution, Iran calls itself the Islamic Republic of Iran. But I will suggest to you that anyone who believes in murdering Mehdi Amin or Mahsa Amini or all the innocent passengers on Flight 752, or beheading babies, raping women, kidnapping and murdering innocent civilians, they are not followers of God. They are followers of the shaitan. I want to thank you very much.
And finally, we're going to hear from friends of Mehdi Amin, Mr. Salman Sima, who was a former political prisoner in Iran and a community activist.
درود، سلام به دوستان عزیز. مهدی was a close friend for me, and he has always played important role in the backstage of the all protests that you seen. So I do remember that after Qasem Soleimani was killed, we hosted a party over Qasem Soleimani killing. So at the morning, Mehdi went to a counter-protest for Qasem Soleimani in front of the mosque with Babak and the other friends. At the evening, he joined to our party for celebrating Qasem Soleimani's death. And at the night, he went in front of US consulate for counter-protest against those jihadist Islamists. So in one day, he did three action against Qasem Soleimani. Some of you knows Mehdi, but some of you doesn't know. And I do believe that Mehdi Amin was a monarchist. He believes to lion and sun flag. But he had friends from many backgrounds. Mehdi was a great alliance for Iranian Canadian community. Mehdi sacrifices his life for freedom, for peace, and for human rights. In 2017, many people, even they didn't hear any word from IRGC, they didn't know that what the hell is IRGC. And I organized a rally in front of Chrystia Freeland's office. It was in one of those pictures. And Mehdi joined us in 2017. Even Garnet Genius motion was passed in 2018. 1 year before everyone, Mehdi stood against IRGC. Daniel Boardman, my good friend, was there. Ardeshir was there. Shahram was there. Sufi was there. Thank you, guys, for coming to this event. So I would like to recognize my good friends, former political prisoners, Bahman Sadeghi Noor, Ardeshir Zarezadeh. Also, I would like to recognize Mehrzad Zarei and Shahi Moqaddam, two family members of victims of Flight 752. And Mehdi was one of the first person that said that this brutal act by IRGC is intentional. So I'm going to deliver some words. Sorry for my speaking language, friends. این تظاهرات که برگزار میشه تو شهر و اینا خیلی اتفاقات پشتش میفته. حالا دوستانی که دست دارن میدونن. خیلی وقتا مهدی خودش میومد ساپورت میکرد، یه وقتایی حالا یا کاری داشت یا فشارهای سیاسی بود یا به هر دلیلی نمیتونست آشکارا ساپورت بکنه، از پشت صحنه کمک میکرد. هیچ وقت یادم نمیره، به خصوص تظاهراتی بود برای نوید افکاری وقتی که نوید رو رژیم وحشیانه و ناجوان مردانه زیر شکنجه کشت، بعد گفتن اعدام شده. خب وسط کرونا بود، جمع شدن بالای 10 نفر ممنوع بود، ما نزدیک به 1000 نفر تو میدان ملت‌مند جمع شدیم. خیلی تظاهرات خوبی بود و آخر این تظاهرات خب همه چی که تموم شده اینا، مهدی اومد جلو. He shook my hand. همیشه این کارو میکرد. یه شعوری داشت که خیلی از افراد، من آرزوم اونو داشتم، میگفت سلمان what is my share؟ من چجوری باید این تظاهرات رو ساپورت کنم؟ میگفتم مهدی you did your share, you pay your share. میفهمید زحمتی که میکشیدن مردم واسه مبارزه رو، میفهمید. I do believe that Mehdi Amin hasn't any enemy except Islamic Regime in Iran. RCMP is covering his death. Sorry, Reza. He was not just close friend for me. He was a great alliance. I didn't have a brother. I have just 2 sisters. I don't dare to say that I consider him as my brother. Reza, sorry, forgive me. But he was like a brother for me. These days, you see the war in the Middle East. I was a refugee. I came to Canada and I just had $20 in my pocket, $30 in my pocket, and I used to live in a basement. My first protest, Mehdi Amin came to my basement. We gathered the signs together. We went to Queen's Park to counter-protest and stand with Israel against those jihadist terrorists. Babak was there, the other friend was there. Babak یادت دیگه روز قدس بود. We went for a counter-protest against Al-Ghostai rally. Mehdi, unlike many people, I do believe that there is a God. And I promise to you, it's 3 years that you are not with us, but your fight is continued.
I would like to invite Mr. Ardeshir Zarezadeh, who is a former political prisoner in Iran and a well-known community activist, to provide his speech for us. Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, Reza Amin, my good friend, thank you for organizing this event and bringing us together to remember Mehdi and to honor his legacy. Yes, his legacy. Mehdi was a true champion of freedom. He fought for freedom in Iran. He fought against the agents of Iranian regime in Canada. And you continue his mission. Thank you. Thank you for bringing us together, uniting us. See, we have guests from right to left, conservatives, liberals, monarchists, Republican. We are all united today because of you and Mehdi. To me, Mehdi was more than just a friend and a human rights activist. He was a mentor, a guide, a pillar of strength. His life embodied the very essence of generosity and selflessness. He devoted his time and resources to organizing events and gatherings and supporting causes, not for personal glory or to be seen. to build a collective voice, through a collective strength in the face of adversity, to fight the evil regime of Iran. He was a tireless advocate for freedom and human rights, and made it his life's work to ensure the safety and security of the Canadians and Iranians. Mehdi's character was truly remarkable. With his kindness, respect, and thoughtfulness, he touched the lives of countless people. His helping hand extended to everyone, regardless of their background, their beliefs, or their circumstances. He was a man who believed in the power of unity, passion, mutual respect, and patience. In times of difficulty, Mehdi was our North Star, showing us how to face challenges head-on. His serene and resolute demeanor was a guiding light, teaching us invaluable lessons on how to navigate the stormy sea of life. He taught us that there is no challenges that cannot be overcome, no darkness that cannot be dispelled with the light of unity and resolve. My friends, if Mehdi was your role model, if you claim you love him, it is important to remember and embrace his teachings about respect and appreciation of differences. If you claim you love Mehdi, yet harbor hatred and anger toward others, then perhaps his true essence has eluded you, or perhaps you don't know him yet. My friend, let us remember Mehdi not with tears, sorrow, but with a resolve to continue his mission, It is our duty to carry forward his dream of a unified front against the oppressive regime in Iran and oppressive forces, unified against the darkness and seek those who seek to divide us. Mehdi's ultimate wish was for us to band together, stand as one in the face of oppression, and to continue the fight for freedom that he so passionately supported and fought for. My friends, let us remember Mehdi as the champion of freedom that he was. Let us strive to live up to the ideals he held dear. And let us honor his legacy by continuing his fight for freedom and justice and democracy. He is no longer with us, his body, but his spirit, his legacy, and his dream live on in each one of us. I'm so honored to be here today as the last person, I believe, standing on a stage. I would like to thank everyone who had a role in organizing this event, making this event possible, from different backgrounds, different groups. Mr. Namvar Shahram, Mr. Qahramani, Mr. Shiravand, Salman Sima, Sara Akrami, Mr. Afsahi, Babak Yazdi. This is what Mehdi wanted, united against the devil regime of Iran and fight against the agents of Iranian regime in Canada. Thank you very much.
Yes. اوکی، در پایان خواستیم تشکر کنیم از مؤسسه غیر انتفاعی Hope in Your Hearts که اولین سازمان هستند با هدف اسپانسرشیپی و اسکان هموطنان پناهجوی ایرانی در کشورهای ترکیه و مالزی. I just wanted to recognize the presence of Jeff Yang, nominee for a Conservative Party, and خانم شرمینه صالحی که running for Conservative Party nomination. و در نهایت خواستیم تشکر کنیم از حضور خانم آویده مطمئنفر که برای رایدینگ اوکویل نورث برلینگتن امیدوارم که نامینیشنشون قبول بشه، با داشتن این سابقه سیاسی ما رو در پارلمان کانادا رپرزنت کنن. مرسی.
Thank you.